Welcome to another edition of the Resilient Living Podcast, a show dedicated to improving quality of life for both people and planet through liberation and independence, moving from surviving to thriving and living life on your own terms. All right, guys, we had episode 74 there, and we were doing emergency preparedness and energy, and we want to talk about a bunch of different things pertaining to emergency preparedness and kind of single them all out like just energy. So there was so much in that show, I actually ran out of time, and I figured I'd do a part two. So today's about the same subject matter, but we're going to talk about a lot of extra things I didn't get to talk about in episode 74. So let's jump right in. Tesla coils is my first one on my notes here. And I never really got to experience seeing Tesla coils. But from what I understand, the way this guy who actually did experience them in Alaska explained it to me, it's like this big giant telephone pole that people have out there. And what they do is they get the thickest copper wire that they can, and they start from the top. Now it's like you would basically fold this thing like a giant U, right? You wouldn't cut it or anything like that. It's all connected. And what you would do is start at the top and you would coil this thing around this wooden, say, phone pole, and you would do it as tightly as possible. I don't know if they're touching, if that's going to mess things up, if they have to have a certain spacing as you're coiling them. It makes sense that maybe if they didn't touch. And what you're going to do is keep this coiled all the way down with both lines going until you get all the way to the bottom, and then you're going to have two of those ends sticking out. Well, that goes to a positive and a negative of a battery. And what this guy is saying is that people are powering their whole entire homes. They're cooking, they're heating, they're doing everything. They got lights, and it's all through just this simple little technique. I'm very interested in actually trying one for myself. Now, the way it works is through static electricity. You ever notice how you rub a balloon on yourself and then stick it to your hair, and it starts to magnetize things? Well, this is what we have going on in the atmosphere around us. These are things that I guess Tesla Nikolai discovered, and maybe things that certain individuals in the world want to suppress. But simply put, there's no moving parts, guys. This could go down. I don't know if ice has. I don't see why ice would bother something like this if the static electricity couldn't penetrate. I know that water actually is a conductor of electricity, but it can go down to a positive and negative of a battery bank. And what you can do, I guess we don't have enough time to go in full detail, but you can actually set your batteries in sync and have an intake, just like a solar. Just treat it like a solar panel. Hook it up to positive and negative, and wham, there you go. And it's your choice whether you want to have 2 batteries, 4 batteries, 1,000 batteries, but you get free energy. And I thought this one was really, really interesting. I do have the guy's phone number, actually seen it, and he's also a YouTuber as well. I can't remember his name. He was actually one of my neighbors, and it would be cool to have him on the show to explain it a little more in detail. My next one for energy is geothermal. Now, if you're not familiar with this, I'll bet you I'm going to tell you some things you've never even heard of before. So geothermal is basically, you think about like a cave. It's the average temperature under the ground when you go down so many feet. Well, it's interesting when you look at a lake and we get, below 0 degrees and the whole lake freezes over. Right? There are times I think that the whole entire thing just turns into one massive ice cube, but most of the time there's this layer of water beneath that never really melts, and that's called geothermal. Now, it is very common for areas to stay around 50, about the mid-50s, about there. So when we look at a frozen lake, if we were able to run a coil or even a non-frozen lake, the temperatures will vary. Say they'll be like 70, 80 degrees on top. Down at the bottom, they should be in the 50s. So whether you're cooling or you're heating, it's basically like a neutral middle ground. So if we were able to take, like, say, a 2-inch pipe, right, a 2-inch hose, like a plastic hose, and you coiled that all up, just like a Tesla coil, and you threw that in the middle of the lake, leaving 2 ends out, of course. As that thing sinks down to the bottom, what's going to happen is that anything that passes through it, whether it's water or air, will be neutralized into, guess what, around 50 degrees, mid-50s. So what you could do is run this hose into your home or on the outside of your home, for fresh air, and you can put yourself like a pump fan of some sort. This is going to force anything that'll force air through this hose. And what's going to happen is it's going to go all the way down and into the lake, or this is going to also be buried in the earth, mind you. Maybe give or take, I would say probably about at least 8 feet or so down is what you'd want. And as you're circulating water or air through that, when it comes out the other end, you can stick that tube wherever you need it. Maybe say into a water outlet or something, or maybe just like an air conditioner or an air heater at this point. If it's 30 degrees outside, you have 55 degrees air circulating into your home. Now, is it the most comfortable for showering and for living conditions? No. But if you're in the middle of the desert, right, and you did this sort of thing, if you were freezing cold, at least, and you had no electricity, at least you're 55 instead of -0, or 34 degrees. So geothermal is really, really interesting, and I think a lot of ways that we can actually incorporate this into our lives and for emergency preparedness in ways that a lot of people have never even thought of. So I just gave you guys the way of burying stuff in the ground or putting it inside of a lake. But there's other things that you can do, such as root cellars. Now, these ones are very common, right? If you've ever gone into a cave, just a few feet under the ground, you're going to notice that it's relatively cool. And that's what people, they knew from the old days. Many, many homes, at least in the west of the United States, other parts of the world I'm not too savvy on, but a lot of people had root cellars. And one of my houses that I rented in Ontario, California, actually had a little mini root cellar, and I made that into my office, and I'd go hang out there, and it was just this nice neutral temperature. Now, we have my mom, Mama Strega is what we call her. We're going to have her on the show again, and she actually lived in Slab City, and that's what a few people did. That's one of the last few free places to live supposedly in the world, where people get to just go build pallet homes and stuff. It's a piece of land where the government just doesn't do anything about. Well, it's hot. It's very hot. It's pretty much, I wouldn't say inhospitable. It's just not the most comfortable place to live. But a lot of people out there dug into the ground and would lay wet blankets and things like that and have relatively nice, cool areas to live. I've seen really nice homes of people who live in the desert, and they sleep pretty much all day, and then they come out at nighttime if you want. They play like frisbee golf and stuff, and they have, and golf in general, and they have like glow in the dark balls so they can see where they're going, glow in the dark holes to aim at. So they do a lot of fun things. But down in the ground, you would think, how do these people survive like this? Well, they're underground, and while it's 115 outside, it's around 55, 60 degrees, give or take, under the ground. They've built their entire homes like caves. So root cellars are the same thing. They're using geothermal techniques here, where you can actually keep, say, your canned foods and stuff like that. Any kind of foods you got where you want to keep them from heat or even freezing conditions, you put them in a root cellar. Well, a lot of people have actually started to improvise on these type of things, and there's a thing called a Wofaty, and this one's really cool. And this is where you dig into the earth and you use thermal inertia. Well, that's the where the heat would go into an area and heat it up, and as long as it's insulated, it would actually stay heated for a very long time. Like, think of concrete. For those of you familiar with the heat island effect, maybe a lot of people aren't, is that if you look at a giant city and the concrete, the buildings, the asphalt and all that hold thermal inertia, when the sun comes out and heats these things up, they actually stay warm. And because you have this huge mass, an interesting thing I'll share with you guys, I used to live in Salem, Oregon, in Oregon State there, and I used to live in that city, and as I was driving out into the country, it would be, say, 36 degrees. And the further and further I started making out of the city, it finally neutralized. It would go all the way down to like 30 to 29 degrees. That's how much thermal mass the city holds. So a Wofaty is basically making your own cave, and people make this out of natural timbers and stuff like that, so it's really, really awesome. I wouldn't say it's 100% biodegradable. I don't know if these things are completely eco-friendly either, because in a Wofaty, you can build the whole thing with posts and trees, skinning logs and stuff like that, but you're going to have to put some sort of membrane over the top, like some sort of plastic, or some EPDM rubber or something like that to keep the moisture and everything from coming and dripping into your home. But it's basically, if you think like a hobbit house, a Wofaty would look like a door with maybe a window, and maybe some wood, a little bit of wood in the front, and that's it. But otherwise, it would look like this giant hill. You can carve out the side of a hill, build your wooden walls and everything, and then bury the whole thing with dirt, and there's grasses and stuff and flowers growing on top. Very beautiful and cool stuff. So geothermal, using the idea of Wofatys. And what I love about Wofatys is that it just blends in with the landscape. Everything looks really beautiful. Like you can't really tell there's a home, in contrast to where you see us nowadays, where these giant skyscrapers or buildings or apartments or even single family homes all lined up. It covers the land. Whereas if we were in the land, inside the earth, we returned to the earth. We came from the earth, and we will go back to the earth. But to live in the earth your whole entire life at a moderate temperature, and I think the insulation from sound and things like that, it just makes me, I don't know, I feel like I'm some sort of animal or something, like a rabbit or a bear, like being in the ground nestled in my little quiet cave, just seems so romantic to me. Now, there are people who use, very interesting too, they'll actually bury out, same thing as a Wofaty, they'll bury out this area, this large, they'll square it off and build whatever they want, like rock and concrete benches, beds, shelves, and all that kind of stuff. Then they'll bury the whole thing with sand. They'll fill it all up like a giant dome. And then what they'll do is they'll actually pour concrete and stone over this whole entire top. And then they'll remove the sand once everything dries. And now you've formed yourself your own little cave. And you could put glass pieces like obsidian and large chunks of things to actually have light, like a little natural skylight and things like that. Thought I would share that detail. All right, so enough of geothermal. Let's get into some other things for emergency preparedness and energy. And one is a tankless water heater. And tankless water heaters, for those of you who don't know, is continuous hot water. It's hot water on demand. It's a lot better than a regular water heater, because a regular water heater has a gas element to it that sits and just keeps heating it up all day long when you're there and when you're not, right? It's a waste of energy. Whereas the tankless water heater, a lot of them work on a battery. They have a switch, so as soon as it gets water running through it, a switch is flipped, and automatically the torches go on through, guess what, coils, heats up that water, and you can take as long as a shower as you want. Now that's kind of wasteful there, but in a moment where you would have, say, no electricity, right? No natural gas, meaning the main pipes from the city coming into your home. If you had yourself a tankless water heater, you could hook it up to like a little 3.5 gallon propane tank and hook it up to a water hose, and bam, you've got yourself hot water. So whether it's emergency or not, I think they're very efficient and some things we should consider, and nice to have on the side just in case. Is it essential? No, not really, but in some cases, yeah. When you have special needs children like myself who are in diapers, you have a child that needs to be washed, you need to wash your hands and things like that. It's kind of sanitary. Yes, you can get by without it, but why suffer? My next thing on my notes is warm, dry, or cool shaded clothes. Now, this is the energy inside of your body. And I think that to have extra stuff for emergency, like I actually do where I'm recording the show as my F-350 pickup truck, and for a change, we're not driving, so you don't hear the nasty background noise. But I've got blankets in here. I've got extra jackets, socks, and things like that. I've been doing like just dumb things like on jobs where I'm pressure washing in my business, where I'm pressure washing for a client, and then I get my shoes all wet. I actually have a whole nother pair of shoes and another pair of socks, because guess what? Your feet get all pruny, itchy, the skin just starts to peel off your feet. For some reason or another, you got wet. It's nice to have a whole different change of clothes, something warm to put on. That way you can continue working. But in an emergency situation, this would definitely be something that you would want. So whether you have children, whether it's just you, maybe even your pet, keep a towel or something like that for the when it's very cold. Keep yourself something like that. You can get out of those wet clothes and into something dry. It's going to save the energy of your body really fast. Now, the same kind of goes to, I can go off on each one of these subject matters, but I'm just trying to give one cookie at a time. The other goes for heat. Now, a lot of you guys who follow me know that I own my own business. I'm an entrepreneur, and one of my main businesses is roofing construction. Working up on the roofs in the summertime, in the middle of July, it is hot. The surface temperature of a roof could reach up to 160 degrees. Like, we are drinking 2 gallons. You got to get a gallon of water in you before lunch. Otherwise, you will get a heat stroke. It is very, very severe. That's why I take my mini retirements usually and don't work July through September when it's so hot. But when I used to do that, and if I have to do it again, what I do is I actually cover my body, believe it or not. Most people would say, well, take off your clothes so you can cool down. But putting on a sweatshirt or a mild covering like long sleeves, wearing long pants instead of shorts, your body actually starts to sweat. And any kind of breeze or any kind of movement of air when you're moving around will actually cool you down. And if you put your hand on the back of my neck while I'm working, where these major blood vessels come through the brain, when your neck gets heat up from the sun and it's not covered, it actually, like a radiator in your car, your internal temperature gets really, really high. So what happens to me is if you put your hand behind my hoodie when I'm working, you'll feel that my neck is ice cold, actually. And that's how people would ask me, how the heck do you get through all those kind of, working like that? That's insane. Well, I've taken the old Arab thing in the desert and applied that into my life. So if you were stuck in the middle of the desert or in a heated area, the best thing that you can do is cover yourself up and shade yourself from that sun or your others, or having a blanket, like I said, for times when it's cold, having a blanket to actually stick on a window. Let's say you were driving and your car broke down, right? You can stick that over the whole side of your car to give it shade on that area, or you can go outside and actually tie some twine or something to it and make yourself a little tent, if you had to spend a lot of time out there waiting for help. So cool and warm and dry clothes and blankets and towels and things, and also cool shaded clothes definitely is something big. The other one I've had when I was younger was a tarp, and I called it my sleeping tarp. And I said, let's burrito up. And at the time, my girlfriend I had and my friends, we went camping, and we pulled over the side of the road, and there was no campsites and stuff like that to be found. So we just pulled off, and a friend of mine and his wife had an RV, and we were traveling with them. Well, we didn't really want to sleep because we were loud, and we wanted to, party and do those kind of things that young people do. Well, I brought my tarp in my backpack, and what I did, because we didn't have sleeping bags and stuff, we all just laid in the sand and made a big giant burrito. We just covered the tarp over ourselves, and this tarp actually held the insulation, the heat from our bodies, and we all slept snug as a bug without blankets. Of course, we were young, but sleeping tarp is something to keep in your car. I would say something at least, I would say like a 12 by 8 at least, so something you can wrap around 2 people. You'd have to use your decision on what you're going to, like how many people and what you're going to use it for. But tarps have many. You can capture rainwater. You can, from as far as saving yourself from rain, from staying dry and keeping the body battery going. You can make yourself an awning. It's just something really, really good. You had to crawl under your car, throw your tarp in there so you don't get wet doing that. Next, we're going to move on to greenhouses. This is an energy bank. When I had my full covered greenhouse, I would go outside and it was freezing. I'd be dressed like I am right now, a hoodie and a beanie and sweatpants on. And as soon as I'd get in my greenhouse to work at the house I was at that time, I literally had to take all my layers off. I was down into almost just shorts and a tank top in the middle of winter. And what was so cool is I would read books and things like that, or do some work, and I had an aquaponics system going on, and that's what raising fish with plants. And what I would do sometimes, the sound of the water dripping was so soothing, and all the plants and everything around me, all the greenery and the oxygen that the plants let off, and the light, I would go in there and set a chair down and read a book. And instead of being outside where it's freezing or in the home, I would be sitting out there in the greenhouse. And I don't know why that people don't have these, but I think that most houses should be designed with a direction and purpose, like a south-facing wall, where you would actually build yourself a greenhouse off your home. And I think that utilizing the geothermal, what you could do is pump air from your home into the greenhouse, which would actually help it keep it warm at nighttime. And then during the day, as the oxygen the air from your home goes into the greenhouse, the plants would actually convert all the carbon dioxide to oxygen and shoot clean air back into your home and give it more oxygen to make you feel more cleaner and happier, right? More oxygen is better for the body and the blood. But it would also be free geothermal heat coming from your greenhouse into your home, so your air conditioner or your heater would have to work a lot less in a colder climate. And then also, if you had a door, that you're actually able to grow food. So talk about saving energy. Not only are you heating your home, but you're growing food and you're keeping the food warm during the later parts of the evening. It just makes way too much sense. I actually would sleep in my greenhouse sometimes, taking naps sometimes at nighttime. And I just love it. I mean, especially an aquaponics system. having that sound and that water. I would love to have like a glass wall between me and my food so I can keep an eye on what's going on if I ever had that situation, and to be able to just step out and actually eat. I'd have a dinner table right in the middle of our greenhouse where I'd have flowers and ferns and things like that. I'd probably end up living in the greenhouse. All right, next one is alternators on running water and wind. Alternators in general, as I mentioned with a bicycle, you can hook up a strap to it and you can pedal your bike and hook up the positive and negative that come out of an automobile alternator. There's when it spins, it goes around a coil and produces magnetic electricity, and you have a positive and negative. And that positive is going to send energy as soon as it starts spinning. Well, you can take one of these things, you could actually modify them with a bicycle wheel and some tin, make yourself like a little windmill, and you could put that alternator right at the center of the wheel, and that will perpetuate electricity for your home. If there's running water, like a stream coming down, you can literally put paddles and have that churn the alternator. Now, I had this idea years and years ago how powerful the ocean is. Being a surfer and living in Sunnyside, San Diego, California, I always looked at the ocean as if you had these giant paddles, and the currents that come in and out, the power that the ocean has. If you've ever been in a wave that's above your head and you ever got pummeled by that wave, the amount of energy in that thing is just massive. It'll throw you like a rag doll. But if we had the utilizing the currents coming in and out, that would actually help to perpetuate something like giant alternators, and it never stops. I think the salt water would be an issue, though, of having to replace metal parts and gears and things like that. But yeah. All right, so the next one I have is maximizing the body battery. And I noticed that when I'm on jobs working and when I hire people, a lot of times I pay my employees when I had them. I actually started hiring some new guys just recently. But when I hired them, I watched them. They're getting paid by how much they do. And I watched how many moves that people make that are unnecessary or just not very, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, when I would go up the ladder, I do this with my whole entire life. If I'm getting out of my truck, if I'm gassing up my truck, I empty my little garbage can every single time. I clean up some stuff on the floor while I'm waiting for my gas tank to get filled up, right? I have a little broom in here. I'll shuffle through some mail. I'm always doing something while something else is happening. I'm stacking functions. And I see a lot of people with energy in their bodies, and they make so much unnecessary movements. If you took a camera and watched yourself in your own home, things that you do, how you respond to people mentally, which I think I want to talk about, next. Look at the amount of energy that's spent on things that are completely meaningless. And if you start to audit yourself, just like the IRS will audit somebody for finances, if you audit your time and audit every movement that you make, the best thing I can think of is martial arts, and that's what they teach you, is to master your body. Yoga, I would probably say as well. Every movement that you make is fluid. It has purpose behind it. When we watch a lot of people in the modern age now, so many movements are purposeless. You're just spinning wheels and not really getting anywhere. And whereas if we harness these things and we really put attention to detail about what we're doing, doesn't mean that every single thing we do all day has to have a purpose and a meaning. It would be nice, actually, right? But if we started putting attention to everything constantly, we'd get a lot more done. So I think a lot of people ask, how do you get so much done, son? Or even other people, successful people. How did they get rich? How do they get things done? They watched about time. They watched about their body energy. We only have 24 hours in a day, right? And 8 of that you should be, or 9, whatever, give or take, you should be sleeping. So you only have that much time. What are you going to do with that thing? How much time could you get, things can you get done with the limited amount of time you have? If we open up to other people and have other people doing things for us, we get more done. How are those people working? Are they working efficiently or not? So we keep locking things down into making things work for us where we don't have to expend a lot of energy. And I think that's really huge. It could be a show in and of itself. But I see a lot of people expending unnecessary energy and not making very many moves count, let alone have purpose. The last one I have is mind energy and why you should care. And this one, I believe, for myself, when I'm in bad situations or just negative situations, I notice that I start thinking about them a lot. And I'll think about them for for quite some time. This is why you should care. Because the energy of my mind actually makes me hungry. Days that I'm working with my mind so hard, I actually feel exhausted. So believe it or not, some science has to say that you actually burn calories thinking and working in your mind. But when I see a bunch of negativity and things like that, it actually starts to sequester my mind. It reminds me of like TikTok, for instance. Now, nothing wrong with social media and stuff like that, but they're flashing a bunch of different videos. I see the mind as a hard drive, like a computer, which some say that the computers were designed after. And what happens is you only have so much space in that mind, in that hard drive. And I think that the powers that be know this. So when they fill it up full of commercials, puppy dog farts, and all these kind of things here, weird stuff, funny stuff, you got to laugh. Comedy's good to have in life and variety. But if you're filling your head up with all of these things, there's no really room for the mind to, unless you make room. That's a whole conversation in of itself. But if you have all these things crowding you, especially negativity, for some reason negativity likes to stick in the brain for years. You start thinking of all these thoughts and all this stuff. You're expending your energy on thinking about meaningless things that don't get in, they have no purpose, and they're not even doing good, bad, nothing. They're just empty, like just occupying space. Whereas if you weren't exposed to those negative things like myself, where you practice a lot of being alone, getting to know yourself, exploring ideas and tactics and things, and focusing your mind on this, how do we come up with solutions instead of dwelling on problems? And we stay away from the negativity and a lot of the problems that we have in society. Notice the problems, don't be ignorant about them, but start focusing more on the solutions. So here's a problem. What is the solution? How do I fix this problem for myself or others? If you're able to do that, you're able to build a business. You're actually able to live a wonderful life of somebody talking to you right now of doing things completely backwards from society. That's the thing I look at, is a lot of people don't have the time. Ask yourself, do you have the time? Are you working so hard that anything extra, you just don't have the room for it? You don't have the capacity. You're mentally exhausted by the time you get home. You turn on the TV, you eat your bonbons, your potato chips, or whatever it is, watch your show, and take a shower and go to bed and do it all over again. You can't wait for the weekend. I hate that saying, it's almost Friday and I get to just screw off. I get to forget the weekend. I want to work. There's so many things that I want to do on the weekends, and I'm super excited about it. Whereas the contrast to society, a lot of people are very disliked. They don't want to be there for the weekdays. The weekdays pretty much is one of the worst times of their life, or just plain sucks. They're bored or whatever. So these are the areas of energy that we start to expend in unnecessary areas, where if we expended them in the right areas, looking, say, well, as myself, I just had this conversation with my daughter yesterday. I says, well, if you notice, most people with money and the way they live, they're about aesthetics instead of functionality and things like that. So how many parents have you ever heard of, seen, Google it? How many parents just take their kids and say, we're going to leave for 2-3 months this year? Where do you want to go? We have no place in particular. We could go to our main spots and go camping or do whatever we want. We're just going to take off till we have a budget, but we can just make that run for as long as we want. We can come home early or we can stay longer. We have the ability, the freedom in life, right? Because of the mind, because of freeing that mind and thinking, how can I not be trapped? How are people being trapped? What are they saying? How are they feeling? What did my parents, what did my grandparents do? What are all these smart, successful people doing? Are they on medications? Are they happy? Are they healthy, right? Look at their well-being. Is that something I want to aspire to? No. Most cases, no, it's not. So what do we replace these things with? We need that energy of your mind to not be stuck in the rat race of society, where all of your energy is sucked dry out of you like a vampire, and you're stuck in your hard drive with puppy dog farts and young teenage half-clad girls on TikTok, and I can't believe some of the stuff they get away with. All of this weird stuff going on that you can't get out of your mind sometimes. You can't unsee it, right? But you stay away and you get into the parts of your mind where you start to formulate your life. Your life becomes social media, the social media of yourself. And you start to design the things that you want and get rid of the things that you don't want, and start focusing more of your energy on those things. Talk about emergency preparedness. That's where life starts to get better. That's where you can see the disasters and things that may be coming, and you can mitigate them. You can put things in place. You can watch what's happened. History repeats itself, right? We have all these things. There's some patterns, some things we have no idea. The most consistent thing in this world is nothing is consistent. Cool. How do I work around that? Use your magic of mind. Do not let them murder your magic. Do not let them kill your curiosity. Keep on going, my friends. All right, guys, that's the show. I want to thank you guys, each and every one of you, for taking the time out and being here today. And if you guys can, give me a thumbs up, a thumbs down. If you did give me a thumbs down, please let me know why. I love to hear all your guys' opinions, but it really helps me out. That's all I'm asking, is if you guys like and share, comment on the show. It helps the algorithms for this show to get known. That's what's going to keep the lights on around here. So, guys, there's an email down below in the description. If you guys want to make any comments, just say hello, give any suggestions. And as I always say, guys, go out there and have yourself a near-life experience. Don't lose your muchness. Carry on the fire. And human up, my friends.